Wesley Pierce hadn't expected his Tuesday afternoon to end with a woman collapsing in front of the pharmacy, while his 5-year-old son clutched his hand, wide-eyed and silent. "Dad," little Jackson whispered, tugging Wesley's arm as the woman dropped her purse and leaned against the brick wall, her breathing sharp and fast. "Is she okay?" Wesley crouched down beside her instantly, concern tightening his chest. "Hey," he said gently, kneeling on the sidewalk. "You're okay, just breathe with me, all right?" The woman didn't answer. Her lips trembled, her eyes were wide, unfocused. She looked like she was trying not to fall apart. "Dad," Jackson asked again, looking worried. "It's all right, bud," Wesley said, handing Jackson his phone. "Call Grandma. Tell her we'll be a little late picking up groceries." Wesley turned back to the woman. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't even hold her purse. Her expensive-looking coat was half off one shoulder, and her heels had slipped off. She looked completely out of place here in this run-down corner of the Bronx. "I'm Wesley," he said softly. "You're having a panic attack. I've seen this before. Can you breathe with me?" She didn't respond, but her eyes flicked to his, and he saw something there: fear, yes, but also desperation. Like she was hanging on by a thread. "Okay, I'm right here, just follow me." He inhaled deeply through his nose, loudly, then exhaled slowly. Like this, in and out. Her chest hitched, but she tried. It took a moment, but she started to copy him. Her breaths were shallow at first, quick and panicked, but after a minute they started to slow. "That's it," Wesley said, his voice low and steady. "You're safe. Nothing's gonna happen to you." After a few minutes, her breathing returned to something close to normal. Her eyes brimmed with tears, and she looked at him like she couldn't quite believe he'd stayed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. I don't know what just happened." "You don't have to be sorry," Wesley said. "You're human." "It happens." She gave a weak, shaky laugh, brushing hair out of her face. Her hands were still trembling. "Thank you," she murmured. "I didn't think anyone would." Wesley stood and offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. "Olivia," she said quietly. "Olivia Vaughn." "Nice to meet you, Olivia," Wesley said, helping her to her feet. "This is my son, Jackson." Jackson gave a small wave from behind his dad's leg. "Hi, you okay now?" Olivia blinked. "Yeah," she said softly, her voice thick. "I think so." "Thank you, Jackson." "You want water?" Wesley asked, nodding toward the bodega behind them. She hesitated. I don't want to intrude." "You're not. Come on." He led her inside, bought her a bottle of water and a granola bar. He had only enough cash for one of each, but he didn't care. She looked like she hadn't eaten anything all day. They sat on the curb while Jackson swung his legs beside them, happily munching on his own snack. "You live around here?" Olivia asked after a while, her voice steadier. "Yeah," Wesley said. "2 blocks over, She paused. "Nowhere near here," she said finally. Wesley chuckled. "I figured." She looked down at her shoes. "You probably think I'm crazy?" "No," he said instantly. "I think you're a person who had a moment. That's allowed." Her eyes lifted to his. There was something in her gaze, something that made his chest tighten. Vulnerability, curiosity, and something else he couldn't name. You really didn't recognize me?" she asked quietly. Wesley blinked. "Should I have?" Her mouth parted slightly. "No," she said after a beat. "No, I guess not." Wesley wasn't sure what to make of that, but he didn't press. He didn't care who she was. All he knew was she'd looked like she was drowning, and he couldn't walk away from someone like that. "Dad's a mechanic," Jackson offered proudly, licking chocolate off his fingers. "He fixes cars and stuff." Olivia smiled faintly at that. "That sounds useful." Wesley nodded. "It pays the bills, most of the time." Her expression shifted, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Instead, she asked, "Do you always help strangers on the street?" "Only the ones who look like they need it," he said simply. "And you looked like you were holding your world together with duct tape." Her laugh surprised even her. "That's accurate." They sat in silence for a moment. Then she looked at her phone, sighed, and stood. "I should go." "Where to?" Wesley asked. "Just downtown." He raised an eyebrow. "You really don't seem like you should be alone right now." She hesitated again, then Jackson piped up. You can come eat with us. Grandma made spaghetti and Dad says her sauce is better than any restaurant's. Olivia blinked. Wesley looked embarrassed. You don't have to, I'd like that, she interrupted softly. If it's okay. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right. But only if you're okay with a tiny kitchen and a kid who insists on telling knock-knock jokes during dinner. A real smile curled her lips. I think I can handle that. They walked the few blocks together. Olivia held Jackson's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, and when they stepped into Wesley's modest apartment, she didn't look repulsed by the cracked tiles or the old couch. She sat at the tiny table, complimented his mother's cooking, and laughed at Jackson's jokes. Wesley watched her all night, confused by how someone who clearly came from money could look so at home in a place like his. She stayed for 2 hours. When she left, she touched his hand at the door and said, "Thank you for not leaving me." He just nodded. And for the next 3 nights, she came back. No explanation, no agenda, just dinner, laughter, smiles, and something that felt like the start of something real. On the 4th evening, Olivia showed up with 2 paper bags from a corner bakery 3 neighborhoods away, a place so small Wesley had never heard of it. She didn't knock, just waited outside the building like she had something to prove and nothing left to lose. Wesley opened the door and blinked at her. I didn't know what Jackson liked, she said quickly, lifting the bags. So I got 3 different kinds of cookies and a cheese pastry thing that looked like it belonged in a museum. You walked here with that? Wesley asked, eyeing the cloudy sky behind her. I took the subway, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I asked someone for directions. Someone, he echoed. A woman with a stroller, she said. She told me not to flash my watch. Wesley stepped aside and gestured her in. I thought you said you were headed downtown. I was, she said, walking past him. But I changed my mind. Jackson rushed in from the other room, his socks sliding across the tile. Is that for me? Depends, Olivia said, crouching down to his level. Do you like raspberry jam or chocolate chips? Both. Perfect, she said, handing him the smaller bag. Then I made the right choice. Wesley leaned against the doorframe. You didn't have to bring anything. I know, she said, standing again. I wanted to. That night, they didn't eat at the table. His mother had gone to her sister's for the evening, and Wesley let Jackson stay up late, curled in a blanket fort made from dining chairs and 2 bath towels. Olivia sat on the floor beside him, cross-legged in slacks and a silk blouse that looked like it cost more than Wesley's rent. She didn't seem to notice the frayed hem of the towel brushing her arm or the chipped paint on the wall behind her. When Jackson finally fell asleep, Olivia carried the empty cookie bag to the sink and leaned beside Wesley, who was rinsing dishes beneath a flickering overhead bulb. You work long hours? She asked. I take what I can, he said. Some weeks are steady, some aren't. She nodded slowly. I grew up with a father who only wore tailored shirts and never drove anything without a logo stitched into the seat. I used to think missing dinner was the same as working hard. Wesley glanced at her. And now I think showing up is harder, she said, her voice quiet, and worth more. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the fridge filling the space between them. Then she looked at him. Really looked at him. Do you ever feel like the life you have isn't the one you planned? Wesley dried his hands, then folded the towel in half. I planned to be a teacher, didn't finish the degree. Life had other plans. She leaned against the counter. Was it worth it? He shrugged. I've got Jackson, that's enough. Her mouth tugged slightly, not into a smile, but something softer. You say that like it's simple. It is, Wesley said. For me. She nodded again, then glanced toward the blanket fort. He trusts you. I hope so. No, she said. He does. You can see it in the way he looks at you, like there's no safer place. Wesley hesitated. You don't talk about your family much. There's not much to say. I doubt that. She looked down, then back up at him. My father owns Vaughn Holdings. He blinked. As in the name on half the skyscrapers in Midtown, She nodded once. That's a lot. It is. You don't talk like someone who grew up in a penthouse. I don't feel like someone who did, she said. He didn't push, just nodded. After a moment, she asked, Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you Google me? Wesley turned to face her fully. Because I didn't care who you were. You might if you knew. Maybe, he said, but I'd rather get to know you like this. Without headlines, she stared at him, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. Most people want to know first, then decide. I'm not most people. No, she said quietly. You're not. She stayed again, but didn't sit. Just stood near the door like she wasn't sure if she was welcome anymore. Wesley walked over and opened it for her, but didn't step aside. Come back tomorrow, he said. She hesitated. Why? Because I like it when you're here. That stopped her. Then she whispered, Okay, and left without another word. The next day, she didn't come, nor the day after. Wesley didn't ask why. He figured she had her reasons. People like her probably lived by a different clock, one with more meetings and fewer explanations. But on the third day, he found a note in his mailbox. No envelope, just his name and one sentence. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'll explain everything if you'll let me. He read it twice, then tucked it into his back pocket. When Olivia returned that night, her eyes were red and she was wearing sneakers instead of heels. She didn't have cookies. She didn't smile, but she looked at him like he was the only solid thing left in her world, and Wesley opened the door without asking a single question. Olivia stood in Wesley's apartment doorway like she was bracing for him to close it on her. Her coat was undone, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion, and her hands were empty this time. He didn't ask where she'd been. He just stepped back and let her in. She didn't sit. She didn't speak. She just walked to the window, stared out at the cracked bricks of the building across the alley, and wrapped her arms around herself like she was holding something in. Wesley didn't push. He waited. After a long stretch of silence, she finally said, My father's trying to force me into a merger. With a man he's picked to be my husband. Wesley blinked. You mean an actual marriage? Yes. Her voice was flat. It's not a new idea in my world. It's about image, influence, aligning the right names. Sounds like a business deal, he said. It is. He leaned against the counter. And you don't get a say. I walked away 3 days ago, she said. I told him I wouldn't marry someone I didn't trust. He told me I was being reckless, that I was risking everything he's built. Wesley folded his arms. What happens if you say no? I lose access to everything. Every account. Every property. Every board seat. My name stays, but nothing else. He let that sink in, then he asked, Is that why you didn't come back? She nodded. I didn't want to bring that chaos into your life. You and Jackson, you're normal, good. I didn't want to ruin that. You think being honest with someone ruins things? In my experience, she said softly. Yes, Wesley walked toward her. I'm not your father, and this isn't your world. She turned to him. But I am. You're standing here in a borrowed coat and sneakers that don't fit, he said. You came back because this matters to you. That's not the same woman who signs deals over champagne and lets someone else make her decisions. Her voice cracked. You don't get it. Then explain it to me. She looked up at him, her eyes bright. I don't know how to walk away from that life without losing everything. I've never had to choose between safety and freedom, but now I do, and it's terrifying. He didn't reach for her. He didn't touch her. He just said, You don't have to figure it out tonight. Her shoulders slumped. I missed dinner. I saved you a plate. She gave a breath of a laugh, almost too quiet to hear. Of course you did. He turned toward the kitchen, but she caught his arm. I came back because I didn't want to be alone when I made the call. Wesley met her gaze. What call? She pulled a phone from her coat pocket. I'm telling my father I'm done, that I'm not marrying someone for power, that I'm walking away. He held her eyes. And then what? I don't know, she whispered. That's the part that scares me. You'll figure it out. She stared at him, then reached into her pocket again and pulled out a small black velvet pouch. She opened it and placed a silver ring on the table. What's that? He asked. The ring he gave me. The man I was supposed to marry. It was supposed to be announced next week, at a gala, with cameras. Wesley studied the ring but didn't touch it. Why give it to me? Because I don't trust anyone else not to give it back. He hesitated. You really want out, Olivia nodded. I want something real, something I choose. You sure it's not just rebellion? No, she said. It's clarity. He picked up the ring and walked to the drawer where he kept takeout menus and spare change. He dropped it inside and shut it. Then it's done. She let out a breath like she'd been holding it for hours, after she made the call silent, with the phone on speaker as her father's voice thundered through the room. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, frozen, as if the words had finally cut her loose. Wesley hung up the phone for her when her hands wouldn't move. Then he pulled out the saved plate from the fridge and warmed it in the oven while Jackson snored softly in the next room. They ate at the kitchen counter, side by side. And when she couldn't finish, he didn't ask why. He just poured her a glass of water and let her sit in silence. Later, when she asked if she could stay a while longer, he nodded. When she laid her head on his shoulder, he didn't move. And when she finally whispered, I've never felt more like myself than I do right now, he said. Then maybe it's time you start living like her. Olivia didn't answer, but her fingers found his, and she held on like she finally knew what she wanted. On a cloudless Friday morning, the front tire on Wesley's truck gave out halfway through a job. He knelt on the pavement, grease on his hands, cursing under his breath as he inspected the damage. The customer, a retired teacher, offered him lemonade and a folding chair while he made a call to reschedule his afternoon appointments. By noon, Olivia was standing at the curb in front of his building, holding a folded piece of paper and wearing a plain navy dress that still managed to look like it belonged in a magazine spread. Jackson was at school, and Wesley had just returned from the tire shop, his shirt damp from the heat. You look like you've been wrestling a lawnmower, she said, eyeing the streaks on his arms. Close, he replied. Missed a lug nut and nearly knocked myself out. She stepped closer, holding the paper out. I want to show you something. He opened it. The letterhead was simple. Her name, the full version printed in clean serif font. Beneath it, in neat black ink, a public resignation from Vaughn Holdings. Effective immediately, all official duties relinquished. Her signature was at the bottom. You really did it, he said. I sent it yesterday. She looked up at him. I needed to wait until I knew it was real. He folded the paper carefully, handed it back. What now? I start over, she said. I'm not sure where exactly, but I know with who. He studied her, the way her voice didn't waver, the way the sun caught the edges of her hair. You sure that's not another leap without a parachute? I don't need one if I'm landing somewhere safe. He raised an eyebrow. And you think that's here? I know it is. Wesley didn't answer right away. He walked over to the toolbox near his truck, pulled out a rag, and wiped his hands clean. You're not built for scraped knuckles and unpredictable paychecks, he said. I'm not built for gold cages either, she replied. You showed me that. He leaned against the hood. You walk away from everything. You'll need to figure out how to cook, how to budget, how to buy toilet paper in bulk. I've already started a spreadsheet, she said seriously. And I've been watching videos on how to make grilled cheese that doesn't burn. He huffed a short laugh. You're serious. I'm not here for a phase, Wesley, he straightened. You want to stay? I want to try, she said. Really try, not just dinners and cookies, a life. He crossed his arms, and if it doesn't work, I'll still have chosen it, she said. And I won't regret that. A long moment passed between them, the weight of choice and change and everything unknown hanging in the air. Then Wesley walked to the apartment door and opened it. You'll need a drawer, he said. Maybe two. Her eyes softened. I'll bring hangers. Later that week, Olivia stood outside Jackson's school with Wesley. She had a paper bag in one hand, peanut butter and jelly, crusts cut off, and a sketch pad sticking out of her purse. You're really doing this, Wesley said, watching her glance at the building. I want to learn how to be part of his world, she said. That means knowing what he likes, what his schedule is, what kind of glue doesn't wash off. He's going to ask you 1,000 questions. I'm ready. Jackson emerged from the door, saw them, and ran toward Wesley. But when he saw Olivia, he stopped, then grinned. You came back. I did, she said, and I brought snacks. He took her hand without hesitation. Can I show you my spaceship drawing? Only if I get to color the moon. Wesley watched them walk ahead, Jackson talking a mile a minute, Olivia listening like every word mattered. That night, she cooked for the first time. The grilled cheese was uneven and slightly burnt, but Jackson declared it amazing and insisted she make it again the next day. Wesley ate every bite without complaint. By the end of the week, Olivia had set up a small home office in the corner of the living room. She wasn't planning a new empire. She was researching local nonprofit organizations, ones that helped women transition out of controlling family structures and financial dependency. I want to help people like me, she said one night, curled beside Wesley on the couch. People who feel like they don't have a choice. You think they'll listen? If I tell the truth, they might. He brushed his thumb over her knuckles. Then tell it. The following weekend, Wesley planned a surprise. He drove them an hour north of the city, to a quiet lake where the trees leaned over the water like they were whispering secrets. He'd packed sandwiches, borrowed an old canoe from a friend, and made sure Jackson had his favorite juice boxes. Olivia sat in the bow, laughing as Jackson pointed out every frog and duck he could see. Wesley paddled silently, watching the sun catch the edges of her face, the way she tilted her head when she listened to Jackson, how natural she looked with her feet tucked under her. After they docked, Jackson ran ahead to skip stones. Wesley turned to Olivia. Why me? She didn't hesitate. Because you were the first person who saw me when I wasn't anything. No titles, no money, just a mess on a sidewalk. You could have walked away. I did, she said. And then I ran back. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small velvet pouch, the same one she'd once handed him, empty of the ring she'd left behind. She furrowed her brows. Wesley, he opened it, revealing a different ring, simple, elegant, no stones, no flash. Just one word engraved inside. Ours. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not, he said. I'm asking if you want to keep doing this, for real. Together. Her answer came as she slipped the ring on her finger and kissed him in front of the lake, the trees, and a boy who yelled, You! Before grinning and running back to them. They married quietly, 6 months later, in the community garden where Olivia had started volunteering. She wore a linen dress. Wesley wore a tie Jackson picked out. There were no reporters, no champagne towers, just real vows, real people, real love. And when Olivia signed her new name on the marriage license, she smiled, not because she'd left something behind, but because, for the first time, she'd chosen everything ahead. The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains Olivia had hung just last week, casting soft patterns across the hardwood floor. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, her hair pulled into a messy twist, sleeves rolled above her elbows as she carefully flipped pancakes. A faint smear of flour streaked her cheek, but she didn't notice. Wesley walked in, still tugging on his shirt, freshly showered and freshly awake. He stopped in the doorway. You're up early, he said, stepping over to kiss her temple. I wanted to surprise you, Olivia replied, nudging a plate toward him. Jackson wanted pancakes in the shape of cars, and I promised we'd try. Wesley eyed the plate. That one looks like a sad turtle. That's supposed to be a convertible, he laughed, pulling her into a quick hug from behind. You're getting better. I burned the first 2. You're still getting better. She leaned back into him for a moment, then stepped away to check the rest of the batch. He has his art show today, remember? I haven't forgotten. He poured himself coffee. He said he wants us both there. First row. I'll bring the camera, she paused. You think it's okay if I talk to the principal today? I've been thinking about volunteering 2 days a week. I think they'd be lucky to have you. She offered a quiet nod, turning off the stove. It's strange, she said, placing the last pancake on the stack. How fast this all feels like it's ours. It is ours, Wesley said, setting his mug down. We built it. They sat together, eating in comfortable silence, the kind that belonged to people who no longer needed to fill space with words. Outside, the neighborhood stirred to life. Buses rumbled down the street, dogs barked in the distance, and the sound of a skateboard clacked against the pavement. Jackson thundered down the hallway moments later, his hair wild and his backpack bouncing behind him. I'm ready, he announced, sliding into his seat. Did you make the syrup warm this time? Olivia passed him the bottle with a wink. As requested. At the school later that afternoon, the auditorium buzzed with energy. Parents filled the rows with phones poised and programs clutched. Jackson stood proudly in front of his easel, his crayon masterpiece titled My Family at the Lake, featuring a canoe, a duck with sunglasses, and 3 smiling stick figures holding hands. Wesley nudged Olivia as they sat in the front row. That duck looks familiar. He said, It's you. He grinned. That tracks. After the show, as the crowd thinned and the janitor began stacking chairs, Jackson tugged at Olivia's hand. Can we go to the diner? The one with the big waffles? Wesley ruffled his hair. Only if you're buying. Jackson rolled his eyes. I don't have a wallet. Guess you're stuck with us then, Olivia said. They spent the evening at the diner, Jackson recounting every compliment he'd received on his drawing while Olivia helped him spell out thank you cards to his teachers. Wesley watched her as she guided Jackson's hand across each card, her voice patient and encouraging. Later that night, after Jackson was tucked in, Olivia sat on the fire escape wrapped in a light cardigan, legs curled beneath her. Wesley joined her with 2 mugs of cocoa, handing one over without a word. She sipped, then rested her head on his shoulder. Do you ever feel like we're living in someone else's story? No, he said. I feel like we rewrote ours. She tilted her face to him. Do you ever miss the life you had before? He considered. Sometimes I miss the quiet, but then you laugh or Jackson sings in the shower, and I remember why I wanted the noise. She smiled against his shoulder. You always know what to say. I just say what's true. They sat until the stars came out, the city humming below them. Olivia reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a folded envelope. What's that? He asked. A letter from my father. He didn't ask what it said. I haven't opened it, she added, and I'm not sure I want to. You don't owe him anything. I know. She tucked the letter back into her pocket. Maybe I'll read it one day, but not today. He nodded, then reached for her hand. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. I believe that now. She kissed him slowly, her fingers curling around his shirt like she was anchoring herself to the moment. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm neither of them had known they needed. Olivia launched a small nonprofit from the spare room in their apartment, helping women transition into independent living after leaving controlling households. Wesley expanded his garage work, eventually saving enough to buy a second-hand van and take on mobile service calls. Jackson graduated to chapter books and developed a fascination with outer space. He insisted Olivia help him build a cardboard rocket in the living room, complete with foil panels and a flag that read, Team Pierce Vaughn. On a soft spring morning, Wesley stood beside Olivia in the community center she now used as a hub for her organization. A plaque with her name had just been installed by the door, donated anonymously. She traced the etched letters with her fingertips. You did this, he said. We did. No, he said, taking her hand. You chose this, you built it, I just got lucky enough to stand beside you. She turned to him. We both got lucky. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, I love you, Liv. She looked up, eyes shining. I love you too. And in that tiny hallway, surrounded by chipped paint and second-hand furniture, they held each other like the world outside could wait. Because finally, it could.